Hi everyone, Sick Mechanico here from XboxEra, and I have the distinct pleasure to be with Luis Antonio, creator and developer of 12 Minutes, a game which I reviewed recently and really enjoyed. It's out on Xbox Game Pass, so you can go play it for yourselves. But a preface warning before we dive in with Luis, this is going to be a pretty spoiler-filled chit-chat about the creation of the game. So you've been warned, so close the button if you're worried about finding things out that you don't want to know yet. But welcome, Luis. It's great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time out with me.
Thank you for having me, and I can't wait to finally talk about the game itself, because everything up to now, it's always no spoilers, no one has played yet, so now let's do it.
Incessant vagary, like there's a time loop and cops come in, and I can imagine that must be quite frustrating, because there's a lot of big ideas behind this title, right? And you know, Annapurna as a publisher, they are known for doing a lot of the more arty games. They're certainly a publisher that I keep an eye out for. When I see them announce a game, I'm usually like, what's that about? And when I saw the trailer for 12 Minutes, I was immediately hooked, because I grew up on stuff like Monkey Island, Simon and the Sorcerer, Day of the Tentacle, for all of those kinds of classic, I've got really fond memories of my Amiga 600 and just clicking my way through puzzles. So it was really nice to play a game of this genre again. And I think from the trailers, a lot of people may not have assumed this is a proper point and click game. Were you surprised when you saw some of that reaction from the community and from outlets? Oh, it's a point and click game.
A little bit. I mean, not that much. Like, you know how it is. There's always someone who doesn't hear about it. We even made a gameplay video to make sure they would know what it was about. But no, I mean, I think it's okay. I'm actually curious what they thought it would be like. If it's like a one-to-one control and you can play like a shooter or something. But I was a bit surprised that, because I grew up with point and click, I love the genre. I mean, there's frustrations from it that I'm sure we all know about, but I like them. You can be drinking a cup of tea and solving these puzzles, and you think about them, you talk with your friends. There's a lot of people that don't like them. There's people who, and I was surprised about. I was like, come on, it's such a cool genre.
It's a genre that is not as often seen, which is why I was really happy to be like, I'm reviewing this one. I kind of put my hand in the air with my team. I was like, that one's mine. I get to make the call on this, because I knew it would be a genre that I'm familiar with and that I enjoy. I mean, I think that's the kind of, you don't see this from, the big AAAs, and it is up to the indie scene now to kind of give us these types of games. And I know when I sort of read into the game and read about you, I mean, you studied fine art in Lisbon. You then came over to the UK. You worked at Rockstar. So you've done Ubisoft. I think you're in Montreal at the moment. Is that right?
No, I'm in San Francisco. I was there.
You're San Francisco.
Last year I was there, but coming back to California.
Yeah. So you've done the whole thing, and I think before you made 12 Minutes, you worked on The Witness, which was the Braid guy, Jonathan Blow, his game. Yeah. So you've done your AAA stint. You've done your indie team stint. When was the impetus to go, I want to do this thing and I want to do it on my own and I'm going to go off and do it? Like, how did you arrive at that conclusion and go off on this crazy adventure?
I was trying to do 12 Minutes for a while, but I never saw myself as programming or even, I guess, because like you said, like I studied at Rockstar, then Ubisoft, so I had this, I'm going to build a team and we're going to build this game. But no one wants to work on someone else's game on their free time. So I was like, okay, that doesn't work. And then when I was working on The Witness, like the office here at Tech in San Francisco is very open. So other developers, they come in and out. So you see these people on their laptop designing games. They go, they share your ideas. You suggest something, they try some stuff. Like, this is amazing. And it's like, I need to learn how to program if I want to execute. Like, it will never. I'm always comparing it to, you say you're an artist and you paint, but you don't paint. You hire someone to paint for you. You tell them the drawing you want, they make the drawing, and then you say, can you move the arm a little bit? No, you gotta, it doesn't make sense, right? I think design is the same. And that opened my eyes, like, if I want to make this game, I need, programming is the way to make a game. There's no way around it.
Yeah, you've got to know that skill.
Yeah, so once I got that, I slowly, But this was like, I was working on The Witness. In the evenings, lunchtime, I would, learn a bit, try some stuff. No rush. I wasn't trying to get anywhere. I wanted to kind of slowly put this idea, make it happen and see how it looks like. And so I wasn't rushed or stressed there's a lot of frustration learning how to program. There's no doubt about that. It's pretty hard. But it's not like my life depended on it. I could at any time stop it and just keep doing art for games, which is what I thought I would do.
Wow. I mean, yeah, it's quite a big turnaround, right? And I think that's, I know that there's a lot of conversation. I've had several conversations with other developers about how great tools are now. And you read about all these stories about people just picking up Unreal Engine and just going off and making a game. But it's not as easy as a lot of those stories make it seem. I've downloaded Unreal. I've tried to play around with it. I don't think I'll be making any indie hits anytime soon, right? So I think I'll stick in my lane. But now that it's you build it, it's out. It's seen a lot of good praise across the board, and I think it's fair to say it's also seen some it's not really for me. Someone commented to me and was like, I didn't know that this, and I said, I think whether you like the game or not, it really just depends on what kind of brain you have. I think it appeals to a certain type of person.
That is very true, actually. Yeah. You bounce off it or you click with it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But does it feel good? It's out, and you kind of can step back a little bit. I know you probably had some bugs to fix and things of that nature, but does it feel nice to finally see it out in the wild and take a deep breath and just wait for a minute and not be working on it?
Yeah. So I love developing games. I love it. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, you're working on this for 5 years." I'm like, I'm loving it, man. And once I'm done, I'm gonna do another one. I'm gonna be back at it. So it has to be very pleasurable. But games are meant to be played. So seeing people play, people react, it feeds me. I love it, and you're right. Also, there's a lot of information in this game that I had to hold on my head for many years.
Yeah.
And now I can be like, I don't care about this anymore. I do care, but I'm remembering this variation on this thing and on that thing and having to keep it on top.
Yeah.
Especially with coding, because I have to know where this is in the code. And
I suppose it changes your outlook of the end product, right? Because you know how all the different pieces have been fit together or adjusted over that many weeks, months, years.
Yeah.
I can imagine. So, I fell on the side, obviously, of finding 12 minutes super interesting. I really, really enjoyed playing through it, and full disclosure to the audience, if you haven't seen or watched my review of it, you can do so on this channel. I'll stick one of the things up there. But in the review, I spoke about how, and I'm supposed to give you some context. I was on holiday, and I got back the day before code came to us, and I was like, I'm gonna have to be smart and actually, because that's always the worry with a point and click game. I know those roadblocks exist. I know that there are moments in point and click games where it's like, I'm gonna have to sleep on this puzzle. My brain isn't letting me figure out what I need to do. And the PR team were really kind, and they sent out hey, email Louise and he'll actually ping you back. And I thought it would be like a gatekeeping facility where someone would go and ask you the question, but you actually responded to me at 10 o'clock in the night my time, and I'm sitting there trying to fervently figure out this puzzle. And I'll give you a clue as to what this was, because we spoke about, and this is spoiler territory now, folks, so this is your final warning. I knew that Dahlia was important. I knew that it was the name of my mother. As soon as they said Daphne and Daisy, I was like, okay, right, that's,
I know,
the penny dropped, but I couldn't figure out how to make the connection, right? And we knew, I was playing with my best friend who was down doing some work with me, and we were figuring it out together, which is another really enjoyable way of playing. I knew I had to show the cop the baby grow and let him see the name to trigger the memory, And here's where it's embarrassing. You remember the look, push, pull, open, close buttons in our point and click? Yeah, we spent probably 2 hours trying different variations of the loop to figure out how to get the baby grow, because we figured, the only way we can get it is when she opens it. That's the only time you open the present. And we didn't realise we could just
open at any time. Oh my god!
Right, so we spent all over we know that's the one.
No, look, I saw some streamers. It's crazy. They learn the controls, but for example, they want to kill the cop and they want to equip the knife.
Yeah.
So they keep clicking on the knife to equip it, so they're ready to kill the cop. But they forget you have to drag the knife to the cop.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see what you mean. Like that.
It
Yeah,
was
there's
just one
this.
of those silly things, and it was a proper embarrassing face palm.
So you're waiting for the dinner, so it could be open,
We,
so you could then
yeah.
use it.
So
Oh
we were
man,
trying to like
that's
speed
just
run the dinner. I was like, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way of doing it.
set
And
up the whole
everything.
table.
It was so funny. In hindsight, it was very funny. But that was amusing. But we knew what we had to do, and it's just me being an absolute plonker. When we discovered, I was like, I just clicked it twice by accident, and he just went. I was like, oh. But never mind. But that is some of the frustration, right, of being in that time loop. Because from the outside looking in, I've seen a lot of other outlets. The time loop part is frustrating, it's repetitive, and I'm like, well, yeah,
The time loop, man.
this is Groundhog Day is a great movie, but do you not remember all of the times where he'd had enough and wanted to die? Like that's how it is, But were you surprised to see that as one of the sort of subjects of criticism? Oh, it's a time loop. Yes, we said that on the box. Did that shock you in some way, or?
No, because I don't like, as a game developer, you really learn to read comments. Like, I don't think that's what they're really saying, right? What they're saying is that they were probably stuck somewhere, and like what you did, like repeating the same thing over and over. Or like, for example, there's a lot of people who would they go through the dinner to drug the wife.
Yeah.
I'm like, you can give her a mug with water right at the start. You don't need to go to the dinner, right? So, and I was hoping, but some people, they get this and they feel, right, I'm getting better at the loop. Now I go faster, I don't go to the dinner. But others, on the other hand, they, like you're saying, they see this differently, and I have to do the dinner every single time. She has to sit down and I have to drink the glass of water.
Yeah.
And then they see her grab a mug before they get really irritated. I'm like, no, there's a clue. She wants to drink water even if the dinner is not there. So I'm not surprised. No,
yeah, I think a lot of the people that said the frustration of being in a time loop is more from a gameplay perspective. Is when you are stuck and you're bouncing around the system trying to figure the next step, but you can't. But that's the nature of point and click games. And there was always one example of getting stuck in a point and click game that always resonates with me, and it's a very personal one. Simon the Sorcerer 1. There is a point.
I've never played Simon Sorcerer.
Never played. The gist is you're a kid from our world, gets sucked into a magical world, and you can't do magic, right? And this is where I'm indignant at my righteousness about this bug 25 years later, right? There's a point where there's this giant dog puppy thing that will eat you if you go past it, and you have to try and sneak past it. And I've got all these things in my inventory, including a live puppy.
I see.
And the way to get past it after...
You would feed him the puppy is what you're thinking, no?
Where puppy? And then Simon the Sorcerer, who doesn't know how to do any magic, does a spell on the puppy and turns it into a pair of sneaky slippers and walks past. And it drove me nuts because he never did any magic until that point. So it felt like it just didn't work in the universe of the game. Ergo, my brain never thought to connect it. So I totally get the frustration of some players out there that think it's too hard or they bounce off it because they can't figure it out. But my best advice is pretty much what you wrote in your initial sort of email out that came out with the codes of like, listen, watch, there's clues all around you, you will figure it out. And for the majority of the rest of the game, we got there and we got to several endings, which we'll get to in a minute.
But would you say, so I agree with you, I think adventure games have that issue. It's an inherent issue in adventure games where, I always give this example. In a shooter, you have this gun that shoots bullets, and that's it. You don't even drop the gun. You don't think, oh, I'm going to drop the gun. There's a payphone here. I'm going to call someone. No, that does not exist in reality. You don't get that choice. This thing is glued, and all you do is press a button to fire it. And once you get that, you're okay. You know the rules of this world are through firing the gun. Or Mario, right? You jump platforms. You're not going to, I don't know, take a bush out or do something weird. And I knew I wanted to do some of that into the adventure side of things, where, right, you know that in reality you could probably drag the couch to block the front door. But in this game, that does not exist. It's not a verb. In the same way you don't drop the gun in a shooter. Your verbs are these objects, you pick them and you combine them. And my goal was that once you know that, anything goes.
Yeah.
And for example, the one you gave of the present, I'm like, literally the tutorial, it's what you do. You grab the rock and you click on it
I know.
to open it.
I know.
And you're not the first one. Like I got people who, and I'm like, I'm gonna remind them again that they can do that. So I did, like, for example, the pocket watch. You look at it immediately after picking it up. I'm like, I'm not gonna even wait for you to click on it. The same with the Polaroid. The character just looks at it. So if you forgot that you can click to observe an object, but then clicking to use it, it's tricky, because if I make you open the present immediately, you wouldn't be able to prove you're living the same day with it, because you're just opening it immediately. So opening has to be a voluntary act. So there's this.
I think that's probably what, like, because we did so many loops where we were like, look, the present, see, how do we know it's clearly unopened? So we just we just never connected it in our brains when I was playing through it. So it's just one of those things. But I totally get why it is that very distinct flavour of game in terms of you know, whether people love it or hate it. It's a bit like Marmite, right? I don't know. You must have Marmite in San Francisco. Am I making a weird British reference that no one gets?
Oh, Marmite? No, I was like, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, you did live in UK for a stint. I'm very surprised.
I know Hollyoaks.
It's a very disgusting yeasty thing that people put on toast over here.
Oh, Marmite, to eat. Yes. I never tasted it. No, I never.
Yeah,
you're right.
Don't
it's
do
like,
it.
What is this? Yeah.
So, you know, we're now, you know, what is it, a week now after launch, the game's out, everyone's happy. Now, you...
5 days, yeah.
You created the majority of this game solo. You mentioned earlier that you had to go and learn to program. How tough was it to kind of switch the mindset from living in that AAA world where if I want a design thing, I go see the design guy, if I want an art thing, go see the art guy, and so on, to the decisions rest with me, I've got to do all of this. Like, what were the pros and cons? Did you genuinely miss it, or was it liberating to kind of be in charge of your own destiny somewhat?
It was super. I mean, that's what was driving me mostly, I think. Like, I remember working at Rockstar, and you would, there would be these art direction decisions that you're like, this doesn't make any sense, and you cannot do much about it. And you really see, like, you see the whole chain of events happening, and you're like. And then at Ubisoft, I was art director eventually, so I could go higher in the chain of command and see where the really shitty decisions come from, the core of those decisions, and how they cascade into. I mean, there's insane thing happening that you're like, you could see it coming miles away, but there's this whole disconnect in the process because it's so big, or because you're driven by, you know, making a profit or whatever. Like, there's all these reasons that you can see these things happening. And actually working on Jonathan on The Witness, that was the first time that it was this breath of fresh air where I was surrounded by people whose goal was to, there's an idea they want to execute, and everyone is working towards the idea. There's nothing else but, does this bush that I put here goes towards the idea? Yes, we keep it. No, we don't, right? There's nothing else.
It's less decision by committee, right? You know, it's like...
No, there's committee, but I don't know, for example, did you play The Witness? I don't know if you...
I have played The Witness, yep. I love both of Jonathan Blow's games, The Witness and Braid.
Like the big castle, where we have those edge maze puzzles. Like the castle, when we were building, we were working with architects, and they were like, and this is an art thing, okay? Maybe it's like we're thinking too much.
I'll probably agree with you.
But it's like, you know, when you make a tileable texture to make those blocks that the castle is made of.
Yeah.
Like early on, they were very big, and the architects were like, look, someone had to bring these materials to an island, and they came by boat probably. So if they're too big, how the hell are going to carry them? If you make the blocks too big, you're implying that they had probably slaves that were forced to drag these things, because a civilization where you're paying people to do this, they will cut them smaller in order to bring them quicker to build a castle, right? So there was all this decision process that I nerd about. I love those things, right? Because you don't see it, but you kind of feel it as you play the game. Like the way the river flows from the mountain, the direction of things, how the sun was going to make the light cause shadows and the trees change, all those things. So The Witness was the first time where I could put 100% of this thought process into the visuals. And then 12 minutes, I could do the same thing, but on every aspect.
Yeah.
You know, from the music, game design, visuals. So I was very happy that I had a chance to do that, and actually even see what comes in the other end. Maybe it's a mess, but no, I think it kind of.
I think it's okay, dude. You know, like I really loved it, and I know a lot of people out there are also really really enjoying it, and it's just nice to play a point and click game again and have some theories to talk about, because it's a very unique tale in the way that it's told. And do you know what's really surprised me? And this is a big spoiler, and you tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm imagining this. The game is called 12 minutes, quite rightly, but the actual loop, I saw so many people saying the loop's 12 minutes. I'm like, it's not, it's 10 minutes. Like, and very few people seem to pick up on that.
It's
and
true.
I didn't want to spoil it because I considered it a spoiler in the review. I wanted to be like, the loop's 10 minutes, nerds, you know, like, but it's interesting because I talked a little bit about it, but there's so many subtle little melody riffs, because there's not really a score as such apart from that main intro clock credits bit, which I totally ripped off with our art guy for our video, by the way. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it. He did a really good job. I was like, can you do something with this? And he did. But there's these lovely little plinky bits that denote certain things are about to happen. There's the way the thunder comes in or the siren goes off at this time that just give you this feel of when you are in a loop. And it's really subtle, but I mean, it's just referencing what you were talking about with the size of the blocks, right? Or how the river comes from the mountain, you know, and everything else. It's about using art to build a world that feels believable, so you don't start questioning why is it designed this way. You know, like why did they make that decision? Because it takes you out of it as soon as you come across something that doesn't make sense. Even subconsciously, your internal brain will kind of criticize it, right, and question why it's there. It was a really well realized world, and the fact that you had to try and contain so much of that in just an apartment is a testament to some really clever design, in my opinion. I mean, did that apartment start off that way? Was it bigger? Was it smaller? Like, did you have lots of different variations on the loop before you arrived at the sort of final, this is the 3 rooms or 3 rooms and a closet?
Yeah, it was a gigantic process. I mean, so the first thing I'm going to say is like I don't know any other genre but the point and click, or at least that you can do more than a single action, right? It's a genre where you can, like, because I wanted a thing where, like, the game, the way it started, right? I have to go back to the beginning, right? Early on, it was just, what's cool about time loops, right? Time loops about you have this information and you use this information and you feel like a kick-ass dude. And there's all these movies that use that, and you feel like a god in a way, then you feel frustrated, then you feel stuck. I wanted to explore that, and games do that all the time, right? All these games we play, like Prince of Persia, I mean, every game is a loop. You die, you repeat. And that's another thing that was bugging me. Like video games, you get into this experience and then level failed, load level. I'm like, come on, man, it doesn't happen in a movie. You don't have a reload. It flows. So I want this to flow. And the time loop allows you to flow because failure is part of the narrative. So suddenly it just worked. And I wanted you to do more. Like, I wanted to talk with, like the things that people say. I'm trying to prove to the wife that I'm living the same day. Just that sentence you're building and communicating to someone else. Point and click is the only genre where I think you have that amount of freedom. Yeah. So I knew I had to steal some of that language, but I didn't know what the game would be like. It could maybe be third person. And early on, I thought about a big city. Everything was simulated, but it's very hard to have a very clear answer to what you have changed with your behavior if it's too big. Yeah. You just don't get it. And if it's too big and you fail step, like people already complain that it takes them 30 seconds to put the table. Imagine taking 3 hours to do something.
Maybe for 12 minutes too, right? You know, you go big or go home. Yeah.
So shrinking just became a natural thing to do. And even before I started to program, I would just, hang out with a buddy and be like, okay, you're home, you're hanging out with your wife, this guy knocks at the door. What do you do? Like, I'm going to see who it is. Okay. He opens the door, he arrests you. What do you do now? I'm going to try to get up. Okay, he punched you. Right? So I would see what people would do.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And I think that would give me this, I would just see where people are heading so I can see where to nudge them and how much room there is so that ambiguity is kept to a very minimum. And even see like, okay, now I know what this guy wants. So you're going to ask him, but he doesn't let you ask. So how can you ask him? Maybe you can set a trap. How could you set a trap in an apartment? So you start to look at what things you could use to set a trap that are not like, I don't know, if I tell you the iterations of things that I tried, like because the other thing is, I don't know if this comes through in the final game, but I wanted to keep dialogues to a minimum. Like I wanted you to act on the things. Like you could very well have an option saying, there's a Polaroid in the fridge that proves your innocence, but I want you to pick it up and drag it. The same with the baby clothes. Like, I want to make sure that everything that can be done through interaction never appears as a dialogue option until you've done it enough times that it's obvious, like proving with the thunder.
Yeah, makes sense. Because first time you have to point at the window to prove it.
Yeah.
But then the game says, yeah, you know that now, and it rolls with it.
Exactly. Or finding the watch. You've heard the wife say where the watch is, but you have to grab it, you have to look at it, you have to show it to her, and now you can say, I know what you're hiding in the vent. But I think you doing it, there's this pleasure of, I got it. Versus the game.
Totally.
Like, the worst thing the game could do is tell you in advance something you haven't figured out yet. So it was a fine line to thread, because sometimes you figured out something, but you don't know how to tell the game that you figured it out. And that's where it got a bit tricky, I guess. So it was fine.
It's I can't imagine the different, because I mean, I tried lots and lots of different things. Some of them for my own amusement, to indulge. Like. We were laughing at certain points, because eventually when you get the roadblock, right, you start doing, and this cracked me up at the time, because you do start doing what they do in time loop movies. You get the montage of
there's a dark comedy aspect to it. It's unavoidable, I think.
It was funny, because it was like, there were moments where the wife gets really irritable with you, and you were like, just one loop.
You're not cooperating now.
Or where you're really stuck, and you just take the revolver to your head in front of the cop. Like, there's all these kind of little dark kind of black humor. It just really tickled me in a lot of ways, because it really lent into the amusing parts of those kind of time loop movies. And while I'm on the subject, just a quick one: favorite time loop movie of all time?
Favorite time loop movie? Ooh, that's very tricky. Because I think they all do different things. Like, the Groundhog Day, of course, is like, it's a big one.
It's a classic.
It's a big one. It's a classic. And I grew with it, and I love it. But I remember my idea of it is cooler than the actual film when I watch. There's some things that I feel are too slow or too old school, but it's a masterpiece. I love that film.
It is a good
But
film.
for example, I don't know if you know the film that inspired Groundhog Day, which is called 1201, which is a guy stuck in a lunchtime. And that one I found fascinating, because it's stuck in 1 hour. You can watch it, it's on YouTube. It's an old movie. But this guy is stuck in a lunchtime. He has 1 hour.
Wow.
And that movie kind of analyzed actually it's too short. You cannot do anything in an hour. Like, Groundhog Day, he could have a day he was a millionaire and he was like with hookers or whatever. Another day he was killing people. It's a playground.
But
in an hour,
God complex.
In an hour, the guy got just stuck in. It takes me 30 minutes to tell you what's happening, and now I have only 20 minutes, and he's hungry every loop. It's even worse because it is lunchtime. And that made me think about really conveying what it is to be in a loop, right? Not just doing the things, but just the experience of the frustration of being stuck in such a short amount of time. So that's a good one. But I like Edge of Tomorrow.
I just like watching Tom Cruise die over and over and over.
I like that one because it's more of an action.
It's really good. It's a great movie, and I really want them to do the sequel, but I'm curious where they'll take it, right? Because the time loop bit's been done, so you're just going to stay, I don't know.
Yeah.
Different
I think
topic.
It always ends up being, why are you in the time loop and how you solve it? Like, on that note, like Groundhog Day, the original script, the guy was supposed to be stuck in that for like millennia, like 1,000 years on the same day. And then they kind of shrank it down to a more manageable, but I would love to see the concept of, like, if you get to a point where your mind will flip, like, you'll see reality very differently, versus he kind of did a perfect day and then the curse is over, or whatever it was. I think there's a lot to that film. Like, I think he learned to live in the present moment, which is a big lesson out of that movie, but it's also doing a thing, which is he's telling you what the right solution is for the puzzle. And I didn't want to have that. Like, you can murder the wife, you don't get points for it, but you don't get criticized. You can just do stuff. And it never tells you anything.
You're poking the experiment and seeing what happens.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
It's very true. So, on the subject of, that scope change, that scope difference between doing something crazy where you can't understand enough of it, or you've got that frustration, you get 3 hours in and the loop resets, you've shrunk it down, you've finalized an apartment, Annapurna's your publisher. Now Annapurna do lots of things in theatre and TV and film, and I can only presume, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, that they perhaps made that magic happen with your 3 AAA big Hollywood actors coming in, which obviously got a lot of attention, right? And that must have been a really cool moment. You started off making this game that was an idea in your head while you're working on other games, and then suddenly you're doing voice acting sessions with Willem Dafoe and James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley. That must have been like a this is I mean, was that like, A, how did that happen, and B, was that a lot of pressure for you to kind of handle?
So it was a very progressive process. Like the game, like early on, I had this prototype. I went to PAX East just to see how people would react to it. I had really good feedback. I was like, I'm going to do this. Microsoft was like, look, here's some money, do whatever. We literally.
They're good like that.
Yeah, I mean, because I looked for a lot of publishers, and all of them were like, oh, like Nintendo was like, can we change the characters a little bit? Other people were like, there was always this, can we have these things? Can we use, how can we make this profitable, whatever?
Yeah.
And then Microsoft, the idea at Xbox team, the guys were like, we love it. Here's some money, do whatever you want.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to wrap up in a year, and this is what it is. But after a year, I'm like, there's so potential in it. There's so much more I can do out of this. And the question was always popping up: if the dialogues had voice acting, would it improve the game? And at the same time, Annapurna was starting. It was the beginning of Annapurna Interactive. They were, and we had been in talks because it's a very narrative-driven game. They liked narrative-driven. They knew I was trying to get this movie vibe to it. So we kind of chatted, and we all, I think this would be really cool with actors. Let's see if we can pull that off. So then, first the process was figuring out. We got some local actors. We recorded them, just to see if the game would actually be better with voice acting.
Yeah.
And suddenly it was, this is huge.
This has come to life.
Yeah, there's this extra, like, people were already caring about the characters, but once they speak and breathe and react, it's all new.
Well, I guess from my perspective, it takes it from, an interesting point-and-click adventure game to almost like a mini stage play where you're watching from above as opposed to the audience, right?
Yeah, and it's real time. It's not like the old point-and-click games. You can be talking with the character for 3 hours in front of him, and he's waiting there until. But here, no, everything is moving. So we did that, and we were like, okay, let's see if there's anyone interested in lending their voices. And the first thing we realized is there a lot of actors were interested, but they always like, can I look at the script? And I'm like, we don't have a script. We have
not really a script kind of thing.
11 flow charts with variations. So that was a process, like how can we make this in a digestible format that Hollywood actors are used to dealing with. And then once they were on board, the process of, look, the recording sessions are going to be pretty tricky because, right, it's literally like, hey, James, now you're having dinner with the wife. You've opened the present like 10 times. You've been in like 20 loops. This and this and this. Now say the line. Now this changed. Now this changed. Now this changed.
I can imagine that's quite tricky for them to kind of. It's very different to what they might have done before. Yeah,
so James had never done. It was his first video game work, and Daisy had done some stuff with VR, but it was there, and they were all live. Like it was all. I wanted them to interact with each other rather than record the lines. Awesome. So they were bouncing off each other, which was great, and that is actually, like, we even split it into. We did like 3 or 4 sessions all together. Then a gap, so we could put the material in the game, see how it plays. Because what happens is that, like, they're so good. I find them super talented that they would bring these layers to the character that you're not expecting. Like we have to, or they start right when you're like, look, because it's so tricky. Like the wife, for example. Now that the game is out, like you can do a lot of stuff to annoy her.
But I have to give props to Daisy Ridley for the best WTF soundbite in the game. There's a bit where she says it in such a way where I'm just like, cracks me up every time. I need to get it as a text alert on my phone. But yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah, so we had to, and the game always came from the design. Like the core was the gameplay. So the characters were built around the gameplay. So for example, Daisy's character, she had to be someone that is. She cannot be a nagging wife, right? That would not work if she was complaining all the time. But she also has to react to the stuff that you're doing. So there has to be this amount of humor and kind of letting it go on some aspects. Or James' character, where like James is following your progress. But if his personality is too strong, then if he starts going off the rails, you're like, no. Like when you call 911, you want him to stay on track. You want to tell. Imagine James would be like super stressed and 911 never comes. You're like, no, dude. Like the worst thing would be to say, don't talk like that.
Yeah.
Right. So James has to be this subtle, voicing your frustration and your joy, but at the same time he has to show progress. He's the only measure of progress. There's no levels, there's no armor, there's no XP. So they had to deal with all these things, and they were awesome finding answers for these questions, because I didn't have the answers. I just told them the problem and they would workshop to figure out how to solve them.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, yeah, and it was lucky to have them, but it was, yeah, in terms of the other question you asked about being, I don't know, nervous or anything. I was more nervous because when you go to recording session, right, I need to know there's so much to record, there's so little time, there's so many variations. I had to be so on top of everything that there's not even, I think, time to be nervous about.
Yeah, you totally focused, laser beamed in on the problem.
Exactly.
Got to get it done. I have to admit,
and after 1 hour, they're like human beings, you know. It's like,
yeah.
You know,
there's an initial bit of starstruckness, you know, just chilling out with Willem Dafoe, and he was especially great. I really, really, really admired his performance throughout. It's just classic. He's just got such a distinctive gravelly voice. He was like, could do threatening, but he could also do that kind of kind, endearing bit when you got that peek into the relationship with his daughter. It was just really cool. It was, you know, despite the fact that they didn't have names, you know, they were just wife, husband, cop. Yeah. You still kind of got this feel for just little peeks behind the curtain about who they were and what their motivations were, and I loved that. I thought it was really, really cleverly done. So on that note, right? So I've played through it a bunch of times. I'm still working on unlocking a lot of the endings because I'm avoiding reading guides because I'm trying to figure things out. But there's we'll talk about some of the endings in a second. But is there one particular ending that you consider to be canon in your universe? Like, is there one ending that you think this is the best ending? Like a preferred favorite, I suppose.
No, I don't think so. I mean, because for me, everything loops. There's no, even the ending everyone is doing where he forgets everything. Yeah. You're just going back to where you started the game. Now you know why he doesn't know what's happening.
That's very true.
So you're not even ending the game. You're gluing all this loop that you did back to the start of when you began, where you didn't have the answer. Why does he say continue? Why doesn't he start? Why is this guy unaware of? Oh, because he chose to be unaware. I mean, this time it was you choosing that.
That's what I found most interesting, because I've seen some initial reaction when they've just got the one ending and they're like, that doesn't make any sense. How could you just forget? You know, like, that's a pretty big deal. You know, what you've just forgotten. But one theory I've read, and I kind of like and agree with to a degree, is that everything in the loop is actually in the mind of the brother, and the only real scene is the scene in the study with the dad. And the reason, and you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but the reason the dad also voiced by Defoe.
Yeah, it's voiced by Defoe, yeah.
So the reason the dad sounds like the cop is because you're going through these different kind of therapy sessions trying to understand, and he's trying to communicate to you, this is what your life would be like if you did these things, right? And this is one theory I read. I'm probably not putting it as well as I read it on Reddit, but the one thing that they commented on was the flower pot that, you know, just blooms depending upon how many more endings you've unlocked through your playthrough, right? Is actually you getting to grips with your psyche and understanding, you know, who you are and what you want. I found it interesting, but, you know, it's probably nonsense and people are just trying to put 2 and 2 together and equaling 5. But I thought there was a really cool way of explaining why there are different endings. And I thought I'd share it with you in case you hadn't read that particular version.
Yeah, I like that interpretation a lot. It's pretty cool.
It's quite unique because it's, you know, when you choose those different endings and you end up alone in the apartment, or, you know, or the other variations that you can have, you know, that there is this kind of element of, you know, maybe he did kind of give you that mindfulness to forget. And yeah, it's super interesting, but I'm not going to spoil too much deliberately. You know, if you've played this and you're watching this interview, you still plenty to figure out, but maybe think about some of this deepness that's going on there. The last question I wanted to ask before we dive into some of the questions from the community, and it's one it's a bit weird to bring up, right? The whole stepsister wife thing, you know, it's a pretty taboo subject. There's been some, you know, shock out there that you went with that as a narrative kind of option.
Even though it's mature rating with sexual themes.
Yeah, you know, and even though now when I played through it, you know, I have to admit I watch a lot of movies, and you know, I just caught it before it was revealed, right? But I was still like, okay, that's unique. Where's this going to go now? But it struck me a little bit that there had to be a step further, right, in this murder mystery solving. There had to be a bit of a shock twist, because, you know, how can you bring that your character that you're playing and controlling into it and give you that revelation if you know, if some fourth character just walks in? It's kind of like,
yeah, you have to be part of it.
Yeah,
your character has to be as much part as all the other two.
So it made sense to me narratively. But you know, from your perspective, was that the primary reason why? Were there other reasons why you went that route, or was it kind of like that's always how the story kind of unfolded as you were figuring it out over the years?
Yeah, I mean, there was, like, if you think about it, like, right, there's the need to solve the fact that you and the character don't know what's happening at the beginning, because you don't know, you just try to play the game. So that has to be solved somehow. And because the game is about knowledge, your knowledge has to be in parity with the character. So there was a question, how come he doesn't know anything? So that had to be solved somehow. And then there's this thing about, right, you see the wife a certain way, then wait, she's a killer, what the hell? She lied to me all this time, oh, I thought she's innocent.
Yeah.
But there's this constant perception that changes of how you see the characters in the story. And you're doing this for these two characters, but you're not doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
Right, so that had to happen at some point. And then the themes of the game, right, they started to be about, you know, the past, relationships, you know. So it kind of, the game was kind of telling me, yeah, this makes total sense to kind of, because you're literally judging everything all the time. And like the game never imparts any judgment. That was a thing I was very careful about. The game never tells you right or wrong. It never says what you're doing is correct or incorrect. And you can be right. You can be very violent or very sweet. You just are. Everything else comes from you and your conditioning and how you see what's happening.
Yeah.
So I think taking that to certain levels, like the revelation of that twist, I think it poses some questions that help you, you know, look at the whole thing in a different way. And there's all this, right? Because do I forgive her? Do I accept her? What about this guy? Do I forgive him? Can I change what I've done? How do I look into this?
Yeah.
I wanted to pose those questions, and I think the narrative this way helps pose those questions.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting alignment, right? Because the game itself, you know, the way it's played is all about listening and, you know, changing elements to get different outcomes and understanding and gaining that knowledge and then acting on it to change different things. And effectively, not only are you know, the player going through that process as you try and figure out the mystery, the character is going through that process as well with you, and it has an impact on their story within the game that you are then witnessing. So it's a really good parallel as you're playing through it. So yeah, it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. So our community at XboxEra, you know, they've been playing through it. We've seen a lot of good reaction on the forum about, you know, yeah, people are stuck. You know, I think someone at Microsoft got stuck on Twitter and was like, I'm going to look up a guide. I was like, don't do that. I'll give you a cryptic hint. I actually wrote them a short 2-line poem because they couldn't find the vent.
A poem?
Yeah, just a quick little rhyming slang. They couldn't find the vent. And I said, go somewhere where you freshen up and keep small things. Carefully look around the edges of the screen, something like that. But yeah, that helped them out. But our community have pinged a bunch of questions that they wanted to ask you because they knew I was chatting to you today. And there's some interesting stuff here. So I'm just going to go through them, if that's okay with you. There aren't too many, and then we'll let you get on with your day. if that's
do
cool.
it.
All right. So the first question I have from Messiah, they've said, I haven't finished it yet, but I so far feel that he's handled the time loop theme really well and with an interesting story. He's interested to know if there's another popular theme like a time loop genre that you would like to look to tackle next from a mystery point and click adventure game standpoint.
Yes, and I've started to kind of work on what I want to do next. Definitely.
Well,
what I'm doing is it's kind of an extension of what this game is doing. Like I think one thing that I like I was saying, there's no, like, this game explored the accumulation of knowledge. Now, but what I really want to explore is cause and consequence and let that flow. Like literally, you're playing GTA, you get to the mission, failed. The guy got run over. I'm like, no. It never fails, man. This is gonna flow. So it's.
I'm intrigued.
Kind of, yes, in 7 years.
Maybe not so long. Hopefully for your sanity.
But I mean, yeah, the fluidity, like the fluidity of having a story being told, and you're just flowing. Like, you're never watching a movie the hero get hurt and then it resets and you do the hit again. No, it just flows.
It just keeps going. Win or lose.
There's no whatever. It just flows. So, and I think that's solvable. I have some ideas of how to solve it. I think that 12 minutes takes a few steps in that direction. I think other people will take more steps in those directions. But if they don't, I'm gonna try that for sure, because I think it's ripe for.
Yeah, hey, I'll be there to play it. Hopefully, that sounds super intriguing. So that's a good answer. The next question I have from Hexa is my one and only question. Louise, why didn't you add a help hint button?
Well, the character actually tries to help you. Like, sometimes you will say some lines at the start of the loop. But to answer that question, like, if you grew in the non-internet era, like with the point and clicks, like, you would play games for years. You'd go to school, tell your friends, you'd hope they manage to solve that puzzle.
Yep.
You maybe reinstall the game and get to that point. Maybe a book would somehow have a clue about that thing. And I think nowadays it's like, I want it now. Tell me everything. And I think, honestly, 12 minutes, like, okay, maybe you will have to spend one night not playing, digesting, coming back to it. That's okay, man.
Yeah, take your time.
And I don't think the game is that hard. I mean, there's some things that I've solved, honestly, like, for example, the Polaroid. Like, I've realized that you have to click on the Polaroid and he has to finish talking about the Polaroid so that he knows it proves that she's innocent, and then it works. But for example, the wife, it's super spoiler, so guys, yeah. Like, the wife, when she confesses, she does say the Polaroid from 8 years ago. Like, the Polaroid we took in the fridge 8 years ago, and a lot of players made that connection.
Yeah.
So they never looked at the Polaroid, but they knew it proved her innocence. And the game is not registering that.
Yeah, so it's not a mind reader.
Yeah, so now on Steam, it's fixed. The Xbox is going to be fixed like in a week or two, once the patch goes through. But so those little things, I agree that they should be smoothed out. Or the red book, like, like to know the quote from the father, you need to ask twice the wife about the book.
Yes.
But other players would just kill her, grab the book and look at it, which is valid. But then he would just say, why a book on meditations? I'm like, no, he should get the quote. She should be as valid to get the quote by killing the wife and looking at the book than asking her directly. So now that has changed, so it's smoother. So
there you go. I mean, I guess having thousands and thousands and thousands of people playing your game kind of helps in the QA department, right?
Oh yeah, it's an army of QA. But just all this to say that I think the hint system is playing with your friends, talking with them about, like, literally, I've had people play, they're sharing a friend, like, like figuring out you have to hide in the closet. Like, they're telling me, look, I hid in the closet, and then she tells the cop where I am. And they're like,
oh, that really annoyed me.
Why don't you hide? Yeah. And I'm like, yes, so you have to hide so she doesn't know you're there. But I think that leap it will come naturally, I think.
Yeah.
If you're not, I need to know now. If you just let it sink for a day or two, it will. Yeah,
that was one of the first things we tried. When you get to the point where you're being strangled and she goes, it's hidden in
it's in the
and then cuts. I was like, when we got in, I was like, get in the closet. And then she just goes about her day, and he goes, now let's wait. And then we were like listening, waiting to see if she would crack, and And
I tried to get some clues, like when you look through the blinds, it's pretty suspicious that you're hiding, or him saying, let's wait. Like, I acknowledge that you're going to be waiting for this guy, so let's just speed up time.
But you can interrupt
it's a fine balance.
if that happens. So
yeah.
It's useful because, if you want to skip through 3 minutes of staring through a vent like some sort of creep, you can do so. Okay, excellent. Next question from Sukya Brode. In what way has the extra attention from being front and center on Microsoft shows and Xbox Game Pass impacted you personally? I can imagine it's great to have so many eyes on your project, but it must have been a little bit stressful too.
So something I've learned over the last years is that what you perceive as stressful depends a lot how you see a situation. Like in the society we're in, you learn a lot of stuff about, like, school. He got an A, you got a B, you're worse than he is. You have to succeed at this. This is failure. That's just shit that you get thrown into your brain.
Yep.
So that, like in real life, when you have a challenge, right, you've probably been taught to see it as a problem and put some negative emotions into that problem. And then suddenly something that is not a problem because you're not getting killed by a lion. You just probably, I don't know, you lost your wallet and now you have to, get your cards again. So all this to say that, stress can be eliminated if you start looking at life slightly differently. So having the eyes of Microsoft helped get more people to play the game. That's it. It wasn't stressful. There's more eyes on it. There's more people criticizing, but people who criticize because they're interested in the project. Like, they're clearly spending their time commenting on what we're doing. They care about it.
Yeah.
Or most criticism, sometimes it just means that there's something that's bothering them. Maybe they're not expressing it the best way, but there's something valid in there. So it's just looking at things that way. So that helped me remove a lot of stress in my life.
Well, that's a damn good philosophy. I have something similar in that I can only ever do one thing at a time. And if there are many things doing, I will do them just one at a time. I'm not going to rush my way through this. I can freak out. It's just one at a time. But was it good working with Microsoft? Like, was Game Pass a super appetizing proposition, right? Here's an instant audience of, I don't know, what is it now, 20 million plus subscribers that could play?
Yeah, I mean, it's inevitable, I think. Spotify, you got Netflix, you got all these subscription services, and me as a consumer, I mean, I don't miss the days where you put a CD and you hear the same album, same band over and over and over. I mean, if you like the band a lot, but sometimes you want to mix it a bit. So I'm not doing mixtapes anymore. You have this.
It's less friction.
So, I do think there's a tricky way to find a way that developers, those are the issues with Spotify. But on the other hand, the Netflix model allowed for mini series to happen, and right, you no longer have Knight Rider and MacGyver where no one dies.
It's
next
just the
episode
same story.
You can see it out of now. We can have these epics and these. So it's just a natural evolution, and I think Game Pass is like the other platforms are doing. Is a step in that direction. I think it allows a lot of people to play the game that probably they wouldn't. Yeah. Or they would just dismiss it.
Because there's no barrier, right? I will give that a go because I've heard people talking about it, and it's got those three fancy actors from Hollywood in it.
Exactly.
It's a point and click game. That's not my jam, but hey, at least you may find some people that have never played a point and click game because I'm old, and suddenly you've got a new legion of fans of point and click adventure games. You never know. Okay, we've got, I think, 4 left, so not too many. So I'll try and get through these because I'm conscious of time for you. Are you okay for a minute or two more?
I'm good. I'm let me see one more question. I think, I'll let Maddie be the call now. Let's do one more or 2 more.
2 more.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll pick the 2 best ones.
Let's do it. Or maybe if they're fast ones, I can say yes, no.
none of the community are fast. They try and sneak in 4 questions in one paragraph. So. How did it feel to see veterans and creators like Hideo Kojima praising your game publicly on Twitter? Was that kind of like a cool, all right, Kojima, this, big time AAA game designer, likes my game?
Yeah, man, it's pretty cool. I mean, even if he's not an Hideo Kojima, seeing people appreciate what I'm doing and taking something out of it is beautiful. If someone that's in the same area and right, I know from his games he's not struggling, but he's exploring similar topics and similar ideas. So seeing him connect with those is awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think this is a good one to end it on, because it's very simple and to the point. How awesome was Willem Dafoe? That's the question. How awesome was Willem Dafoe?
He's pretty, like, Willem Dafoe is like, he has so much experience, right? This guy he's been around for a long time. He's been doing theater, he's doing film, he's done a million things. So you don't want to waste his time, let's say, right? I wanted to be there to give him the best tools possible so he could give me the best material possible. Yeah, you feel that from him. He said, look, I'm going to give you like 500%, but be ready with what I need so I can do that for you.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's great. I mean, they're great. It's crazy. They're so versatile that it's unreal. Like,
Well,
yeah. And
Willem Dafoe sounds pretty awesome to me. So yeah, it's a good answer. Well, look, I appreciate we've taken up a good hour of your time. I'm really, really glad that I got the chance to sort of meet and chat to you about the game, because I absolutely loved it. It's rekindled a bit of my old love for point and click adventure games, and I want to go out and see what other ones I might have missed. I've had a lot of recommendations for Thimbleweed Park that I need to apparently go and try. So
yeah, I've played it. Yeah, from Ron Gilbert. Yeah,
it is. Yes. So I need to go back and find that one. I don't know how I missed it, but I did. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Louise, and I wish you every success. I hope that the game feedback continues to come in, and I can't wait to see what you make next.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I love the questions, and yeah, I'm glad you like the game and like the questions from the community. They were pretty cool. I wish we had more time to just keep going over them, but
they are a chatty bunch. But yeah, no worries. Well, look, we'll end it there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button, and then ring the little bell and do all that stuff. And stay tuned to XboxEra for more, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.